Hello, welcome to the John Carr Library at the University of Sheffield, where I'm joined by Raoul de Jong. Raoul de Jong is a Dutch author, he's a columnist, he's a television maker, and he is in the UK on to celebrate and to launch Jaguar Man, which is the translation of his 2020 novel by John Eyck. Raoul is also a prominent voice in a new story, a new narrative about colonialism. How do we talk about that period in European history, in world history, and how can we make it a more equal, a more open, a more fair story? So, very warm welcome to you, Raoul. Super that you're here. Congratulations on the publication of your book, which comes with a big recommendation. I love Jaguar Man, says Edouard Louis. Is your work similar to Edouard Louis' work? Do you have things in common?
Yeah, we do have things in common. We're very good friends, and he read Jaguar Man in the French translation, which came out 3 years ago or something, and he loves the book, obviously. But yeah, no, we have a lot in common as people, but also as what we're trying in what we're trying to do with our work. I think we do it in a slightly different way, but we're doing it for the same reason. I think we're both trying to rewrite the story of our ancestors, of our parents, of the people that gave us life, and we're trying to create a new reality also. That's the goal of these books that we're writing. It's not just entertainment. They are meant to cause something in reality and change something for certain groups of people, and yeah,
I think they definitely do. So absolutely. I think it would be a good idea if you read a bit from Jaguar Man to give people an impression of your voice.
Yes. Dear thou who art my forefather, for these past few years you've been playing a game with me. You send me signs and I follow them from Rotterdam to Paramaribo, from Rome to Recife. But every time I came close to treading on your tail, you sped away. We cannot go on like this forever. I think you know that as well as I do. It's time to take stock, to put our cards on the table. All right, I will start. This is not a story about white or black, the Netherlands or Suriname, the old world or the new. And it's not a story about my father, even though it involves all those things. This is a story about you, Jaguar Man. I'm told you had supernatural powers, and those powers have something to do with me. Is that possible?
Ah, fabulous. So the title is Jaguar Man.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about who Jaguar Man is?
Yeah, so it's this mythological ancestor that my Surinamese father told me about one of the first times that I actually met my father. So I was 28 when I met my father for the first time. My father is a black man from Suriname, former colony of the Netherlands. My mother is a white, blonde woman from the Netherlands. And I grew up with her until when I was 28, I got an email of my father. I'm looking for my son, Raoul de Jong. So we met and we spoke about many things. And one of the things that he told me during that first meeting was that one of my ancestors was like a voodoo priest, Winti, we say in Suriname, an enslaved African man, who had the power to turn himself into a jaguar. And my father said these powers are hereditary. They were passed from father to son. But don't worry, my father said, because he is Christian, those powers would leave me alone. And he advised me to absolutely not dive into this story, not to research what these powers were, because bad things would happen, he said, if I did. And then he didn't pick up his telephone anymore. So he appeared for the first time when I was 28, and then he disappeared again after telling me this story. And
so you couldn't ask him more?
No, I couldn't ask him more. And it was like the perfect cliffhanger. He left with a cliffhanger. So all I could do to get the answers was like finish the story myself.
And you did a lot of research, didn't you? Not just into your own ancestry, but also the history of Suriname.
Yeah.
Because the book is also very much a history of Suriname.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit about your research? How did you set about it?
So there was the story of the Jaguar Man, and yeah, I wanted to find out what are those powers and why is my father so afraid of them, and what do they have to do with me. So I knew very little about Suriname. I knew as much as an average Dutch person, which is almost nothing. So I went to a bookstore one day and I asked, do you have books about Suriname? And they had one book. This was the biggest bookstore in the city where I live, like a huge bookstore. And they had one book about Suriname. It was written by two Amsterdam students. And the book was about, yeah, basically the silliness of Suriname politics and about what Suriname could learn from the Netherlands. And I got that book and I was like, that's not what I'm searching for. I want to know what is beautiful about Suriname. Uh, and I would like to read it in a book that is written by somebody that looks like me or my father. So I was searching for like a Maya Angelou or a James Baldwin. And in the bookstore, they said they don't exist. People like that, there are no writers from Suriname. So I was very stubborn. I went on the internet, and then after searching for a very, very long time, I found a book from 1934, which was written by Anton de Kom, a black man from Suriname. And they had a copy in the library in Rotterdam. So I had not paid my bill with the library, so I could not take the book home. So for 3 days, I would go every day to the library, sit there and read this book. And I finished it in 3 days. And yeah, it was a really weird and magical experience to read that book. It explained me the history of Suriname. It explained me how much that history has to do with the history of the Netherlands. You cannot really understand the Netherlands if you don't know that history. For example, as I would find out later, like the owner of my family, my enslaved ancestors, was the founder of the Dutch bank, the National Dutch Bank. It's so intertwined, the world that we live in now and that history. So that's what I understood. I understood also like how terrible that history had been for people that looked like me. And I understood, somehow though people survived, and that's why I'm alive. And how did they do that? And yeah, what did that have to do with this Jaguar powers that my father told me about and that I should leave alone? So yeah, and I also felt like, okay, now after searching for a very long time, I found this book. What can I find more if I keep on looking? How big is this story exactly? And how many voices are there that have been silenced and that I could find maybe if I keep on searching? So
How long did this take you? We're talking quite a big project.
yeah, so the writing of the book took me 7 years. Yeah, and the research was like 3 or 4 years. I went to Suriname. I went to speak with voodoo priests. I went to the rainforest. I went to Recife in Brazil, where the Dutch had been also. It took me a long time to find all the information that I was looking for, to find the voice of people like my ancestors, basically. That took a long time. And then when I found these voices, it took me a long time to, yeah, find a way in which I could share everything that I had found out in a way that would be appealing to people. And yeah.
So you did a lot of research
Yeah.
into written sources and into literary sources and unwritten sources.
Yeah.
But then, of course, you had to turn it into the form of a novel, the form of a book.
Yeah.
Can you tell us something about the structure and how you came to write it the way you've written it?
Yeah, so at a certain point, after 5 years maybe or something, I had like 20 notebooks filled with notes taken during interviews. I had like a voice recorder also with like, I don't know how many hours of recorded interviews. 50 books I found in archives and in libraries, and yeah, and somehow I had to make a book out of this, out of all this information that I found, and I knew what I wanted to do in this book. I wanted to explain the history of Suriname. I wanted to explain how it was possible in that history that people like my father or like myself were turned into slaves, and that people like my white grandfather were turned into monsters, slave owners. Like, I wanted to explain that. I wanted to look the horror of this history into the face, but I also knew I wanted to get out at the light. I wanted to end at the light, and I wanted readers to feel happy somehow at the end of the book. And I had found all these voices. Anton de Kom was the first, but there were many, many, many others. And I knew that I wanted this book to be a sort of temple for these voices, for these writers. So I wanted to let them tell the history of Suriname also. Yeah, so these were the things I wanted to do with the book. And I wanted the book to be entertaining. I didn't want people...
It is very funny as well.
Yeah, and I wanted people
How
to
could you
read the
make this
book.
funny? How did you manage to find light in all the...
Yeah, so in the end, what was a very big part in making this whole book work was writing it as a letter to this ancestor called the Jaguar Man. Yeah, and that was actually like 2 months before the deadline of the publisher. Because the publisher, they were not so into this Jaguar Man story. They were a bit, yeah, it's like a little bit silly. It's a little bit like, are people really waiting for this? And then my father, of course, was very afraid of the Jaguar. So I had kind of left it in a corner, this whole story, even though for me it had been the main drive the whole time. So in the end, I was like, no, I should just write it. I should rewrite the whole book as a letter to the Jaguar Man. So that's what I did, and that's how it all came together. How it also became like just a great story, not just information, sharing of information, but also like
No, it is a great...
entertaining.
Yeah, it is a great story. And you do... There's lots of lightness in your mistakes as you travel to Suriname for the first time.
Yeah.
You know, you go cycling in the afternoon and you just look like a European at times who
Yeah.
makes all the mistakes.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
Yeah. Yeah, that was important also. It was important to like not make this book like, yeah, you're bad because you don't know anything about Suriname, or you're bad because you're afraid of voodoo. Yeah, so using myself as a tool in that sense was very helpful because, yeah, like that way I could reach white people and black people because I am both. Yeah, and it helps sometimes to show my silly side as well, to as a contrapoint to all the darkness that is in this story as well. Yeah,
Works super. Works
thank
really
you.
well. There's also a message. There is a mission, isn't there, behind the book?
Yeah.
Was that clear from the start, or did it develop as you went along?
It developed as I went along. Well, no, I think actually, I mean, first of all, I was researching, so I found Anton de Kom at a certain point, but I didn't know if there were any other voices, because everybody would tell you there are no other voices, but also everybody had said there are no voices at all, and then I found Anton de Kom. So I kept on researching for these voices, but I didn't know if they existed for the longest time. But that was my drive, though. I wanted to find these voices. And then when I found them, yeah, it was, for me, it was like, yeah, this is the point. People have no idea. And I want to share that for people, but also for these voices. Something has to be made, something has to be corrected. And I can do that. Yeah. So that it kind of was clear from the beginning that that is what I wanted to do, but for the longest time it was just belief that maybe I could find these voices even if there was no proof. And then when I found them, then was like, yes, okay, so then I should.
And I guess the book appeared, it was published, it coincided with the rise of Black Lives Matter movement, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
And that, in a Dutch context, led to all sorts of new developments.
Yeah.
We have the apologies in 2022 by Prime Minister Rutte, and then 2023 by the King. Do you think the mood has changed in the Netherlands?
Totally. Well, after Black Lives Matter, I think if this book was like published 2 months or something after Black Lives Matter, and if it would have been published before, it would have not done the same thing. People were ready for this story to be told, or to be told and to hear it, and it was like that for a while. I think for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Yeah, things were changing rapidly, and then you would see also, oh wow, it's working. Like it does make sense to talk about this stuff because like there is all of a sudden an apology from the Prime Minister, or like Anton de Kom, all of a sudden, the writer from 1934, his book became a bestseller 86 years after he wrote it. The government made apologies to his family. And like for a while, it was like, wow, things are really changing. And let's give this all our energy. Let's not sleep and let's sit at every table and let's give this all our energy.
And now you've got your book in English.
Yeah.
So now you're breaking potentially into an international market. Do you think that is important? Do you think your narrative is specifically a Dutch-Surinamese relationship narrative, or does it go beyond?
Yeah, it goes beyond. No, it's very important to me for many, many reasons. Well, first of all, because in the book I researched the powers of my enslaved ancestors, basically. And if you look what these powers were and where they came from Africa, and they traveled with these people on slave ships to the New World. And these people would arrive, for example, in Curaçao, where there was a slave market, and then one brother was sold to a plantation on Suriname, another brother was sold to a plantation or to people in New Amsterdam, New York, another one went to Haiti. But these were families, and they brought with them the same powers, the same traditions, the same memories. So for example, the name that in Suriname is given to the spirit of the jaguar is Kromanti. And this word Kromanti, you can also find it in Jamaica, you can find it in Haiti, you can find it in the United States amongst black people. So the powers that this book is an ode to are not Surinamese. Suriname was an invention by the Dutch, one could say, but not even, because the first people that were colonizing this piece of Amazon rainforest that would become Suriname were the English. They were the first one that settled there. And Suriname became Dutch after New Amsterdam was traded with the English. So then Suriname became Dutch and New Amsterdam became New York. And the French were also there and the German were there.
But
it's not,
sorry for interrupting, but
No.
if you look at Suriname now, Suriname in South America seems slightly isolated.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. No, yeah, and that's one of the things that I would like to change also, or that annoys me in a way. Like Suriname is it's because of the language also. Even though everybody speaks English, most of the people speak English in Suriname as well. But the regard, how do you say, is still very much on the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And if you will go to a bookshop there, you will find books about Suriname or about the Netherlands. You don't find books about Brazil or Jamaica or about Venezuela in a Surinamese bookshop, while those countries have so much more to do with Suriname.
Yeah.
And Suriname will be more powerful. All these suppressed people will be more powerful if they united with each other instead of always having the regard at the oppressor. Yeah, so like even Anton de Kom, he understood that. He wrote this beautiful book in 1934. It was published in Dutch. He tried to get it published in French. It was published in German, I think, during his lifetime. He was trying to get an English translation also, because he also understood, like, in order to end this oppression, we need to unite with other oppressed people that we have so much in common with. And actually, in fact, if you go back long enough, they often were descendants of the same families.
So looking beyond the sort of national framing that you see, this was British Empire, this is French Empire, Dutch Empire, do you think, important for an emancipation, for a further development process?
Yeah, it totally is. And also for me, it's like, for me personally, it gives me more energy to not always be focused on the Dutch, who for such a big part don't want to hear this story. And you have to do all this extra things in order to make them understand, oh, in the end, this story is just about humanity, and you can actually, you don't have to be black or have an uncle from Suriname or a father from Suriname in order to learn something from these people that this book is an ode to. Just like I don't have to be white to learn something from Ernest Hemingway or enjoy Ernest Hemingway or whatever. So a lot of the work that I had to do in Holland over the last couple of years was trying to make people understand this story is for everyone. And I noticed as soon as I get out of the Netherlands, I don't have to do that work anymore. It's much easier to just talk about what this book is about and not do extra work. So yeah,
Yeah, because you don't have that baggage. Yeah, no,
you
I
don't
can
have
see
that
that.
baggage.
So
Yeah,
it's quite liberating in a way to talk about your book here, for
it's
example.
very liberating. Yeah, and the beautiful thing is also that because of the English translation, I meet people, I meet readers from Jamaica or the United States, the south side of Chicago, or indigenous people from the United States. I met also because of this English translation. And yeah, it gives me so much more energy
No,
to,
so it is
yeah,
important.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, to finish off, what you do is so you looked at written sources, you talk to a lot of people, but also in the form of your book, and I will show it to the camera, you included things like portraits of people, but sometimes also little diagrams. So it is like you are trying to break out of the written word as well and go into a more performative or visual field. Is that something that you think is important, and does it reflect maybe a practice that we should all adopt rather than our reliance on archives, the written word?
Well, okay, I have two answers. First of all, not we don't have to all adopt that, but for me it made sense, and for this story it made sense. And I didn't know for the longest time that these drawings were going to be a part of the book. Actually, I started drawing the faces of these writers and voices that I found because the writing was just so hard sometimes, and it would be like a little pulse, and it would be also a way for me to like study the face of this person and sort of get closer to these writers. And then at a certain point I had like a writing desk, and above the writing desk there was like a whole wall with these faces looking at me while I was writing. Yeah, and as I said, this book was like a temple, a sort of temple for these people. So then at a certain point I thought, yeah, it would make sense to also put these faces in the book because they worked so hard to make these people disappear. And it's not just their voice, it's also, it's their image also. So in that sense, it made sense for this book. And then about the non-reliance on only written archives. Yes, for this story, well, if you want to find the voice of, I don't want to say in general oppressed people, but in this case of enslaved people, like one of the first things you find is that enslaved people were not allowed to learn to read or write. That was one of the ways how they how they turned people into slaves, basically. So then at the beginning you might think, oh, so that means like they did not use their voice. But then after a while I understood that's not true. They still spoke. They just had to learn to talk in a way that the master didn't understand that they were talking. So they didn't do it through the written word, but they, for example, they did it with clothes. And they gave color codes with the fabrics that they were wearing, like the colors, all the colors the fabric could have meant something. They were, for example, referring to certain deities, African deities. They did it with music, with rhythms. Like, and that's the wonderful thing, for example, talking about these rhythms. These rhythms, they often were used to call certain spirits, African spirits that had traveled along with them on the slave ships. So with a certain rhythm, they could call a certain spirit. And these rhythms, we still hear them every day. Like those are the rhythms that we dance to when we let ourselves go in the discotheque. Or even like in Justin Bieber, the songs of Justin Bieber, you can hear certain rhythms. Not that Justin Bieber knows that or even his producer knows that, but the roots of those rhythms are actually for spirits. So people learned how to hide their voice in such a clever and attractive way that actually we still hear these voices around us every day, and we don't know what they are saying. Only if you are like tuned in the secret society, kind of, you can recognize it. But so yeah, it's not just the written word. If you focus solely on the written word, you will not find the voice of the ancestors.
Shall we end with the written word though? Could you read one more piece from the novel?
Yes. Okay, my father tells me you had the power to change yourself into the strongest, and some say the cruelest animal in the Amazon, the king of the rainforest, the jaguar. How did you do that? Who were you? Where did you come from? How did you get those powers? And why does my father tell me I should leave those powers alone?
Thank you very much, Raoul.